top screen. So Russell, if you don't mind talking a little bit about yourself, your club and what you cover and your experience and that side of things.
Okay, my name's Russell Levenston. I'm Managing Director of Leicester Riders. I oversee all of the basketball program stuff at the club. We have teams from the top end of professional, BBL, WBBL. We have about 25 teams all the way down to sort of junior under 10s. We also have a huge community program working in around about 100 schools around Leicestershire. And we also, 3.5 years ago, built our own arena. So we have a purpose-built basketball arena in Leicester called the Morningside Arena.
Brilliant. Simon?
Hi, my name's Simon Griffiths. I'm from Uttoxeter. Co-founded the Uttoxeter Bulls in 2015, and it all started from a back garden. And we've grown it, so we have about 150 members now. We have 3 sessions for 3 age groups from age 8 all the way up to 16 plus. And yeah, we've just seen it grown so much over the past few years.
Brilliant. Clive?
I'm Clive Allen with West Bromwich Albion. We've been with them now, this is my 15th year. We started with just two teams, we've now got 12 teams. We've got a pathway that we're working with Dudley College, so we've got FE College, and then we also link with Wolverhampton University. So we've got a men's team that's running from there, so that's our pathway. With the Albion, there's just over 80 kids involved with the program. My job is just to oversee it. I do coach some of the teams because we were lacking in coaches. We lost one of my main coaches, Dean Blake, to the Worcester Rules, but we won't go into that. So that's basically my job. I've got different hats. As I said, I'm the head coach at the university. I'm also the head coach at the Dudley College, and I oversee all the stuff at the Albion. Just the last thing, Albion, we are part of the club, but we are part of the foundation. So there is things there. So we are linked with the club per se, but it's more the foundation.
Brilliant. Luke?
Yeah, I think Clive missed off there that he's a Birmingham and BBL legend as well, and our West Midlands Coach of the Year as well. I think he's a bit modest.
Yeah. Thanks, Luke.
Yeah, I'm Luke. I'm Luke Freer. I am a development manager for the Active Partnerships. They used to be called County Sports Partnerships. Simon, I work with Claire Greenwood. I've actually heard quite a bit about you, actually.
Yeah, I know her.
But basketball's my sport. I'm the chairman of the region, and I coach National League for Warwickshire Hawks, and I play for Redditch Basketball Club. And I've been involved in basketball for since probably 95, you know, Thames Valley Tigers fan.
Brilliant. Thanks, Luke. Nick?
Hi there, Nick Bedwell. Where do I start? I'm a level 4 referee, level 3 table official, level 2 coach, FIBA statistician. I'm the chair of Basketball Sussex, and I do all the league administration. In Sussex, we've got 20 plus clubs playing National League and local leagues as well. And I'm part of the South East Regional Management Committee, covering league and competition support plus officials development. So yeah, lots going on at the moment.
Brilliant. Thanks, Nick. And last, by no means least, Kate.
Oh yeah. Yeah, Kate Lewis. I've had a long history in basketball. Started off playing, became a referee, level 4 like Nick. Did a bit of BBL before I retired at the grand old age of 31, I think I was. I then had quite a long break. I did actually work for BE for a number of years, which was an interesting period of my life. I actually loved every minute of it. I've done loads of work in various sports development. My last job in sport really was I was a sports strategy advisor in Sheffield, which was I absolutely loved it. It was brilliant to work with lots of different sports, including our beloved basketball. And now I moved back to the Wirral a few years ago, and somehow got developed a club in, I don't even know how it happened actually. John Lavery and I just saw a gap in South Liverpool, which is Liverpool 8, so Toxteth. No basketball provision in the area whatsoever, so that was 4 years ago. We've now got 200 kids coming We've got next year, hopefully we'll be entering 8 National League teams, which includes girls as well. We've got a massive pay and play programme. And also recently, I've taken on the Northwest chair role, which I'm having a lot of fun with because there's been nothing done in the Northwest for a few years. So blank page, and it's good fun. So
good stuff. I just want to bring in the idea of club development, and it seems to get battered around quite a lot. But sometimes it can be actually quite difficult to kind of pinpoint what club development is. So I'm interested to hear people's views about what the term club development means to them as individuals, and kind of how you've developed your club over the kind of past 3 or 4 years, and whether it's a case of it's been organic or it's been kind of pushed by certain key stakeholders and those sorts of things. So starting with Clive, the club development side of things, what is your interpretation of what club development is, and for you, what's happened over the past few years to get to the point where you guys are at right now?
I'll say I've been lucky in an aspect that Albion have always been getting people participating in the sport. So they've never really said that these kids have got to win anything. It's all about engaging and getting kids to play. Obviously, we'd love them to, play at the higher level, but I've never had that pressure where all my teams have had to like kind of win medals and stuff. So I look at it as a development, putting in that umbrella long player development with the kids. So a lot of my like kind of work goes to getting kids just participating more than anything else.
Is there ambition to become a bit more competitive moving forward as an actual kind of pillar of the club, or is that kind of something that may happen but you're not necessarily concentrating on that kind of thing? Okay,
good question. Now, the reason why I'm now with Dudley and with Wolverhampton is we can now put that now we can actually say, okay, Albion are doing a lot of that kind of development part of it now. If the kids now want to go on and take it up to the next level, that's where we've got Wolverhampton University now. So we've got an outlet for these kids if they want to play professionally and want to take it to the next level. Also at at Dudley College, where I am in the process of trying to turn it into an academy, where we can now siphon off some of the kids that want to take it up to that next level, who just want to play. Because we've got quite a few of our kids just want to play, but not looking to take it to the next level. So with these like kind of pathways now that I've got all the my youngest team at West Brom right now is our under 12s. And we go under 12s, under 14s, under 16s, under 18s, and then the teams in between we do with the YBL, which we've got under 13s, 15s, 17s, and then we've got the local league men's. So those teams now, if a kid now wants to take it to the next level, we'll be telling them to, go to Dudley College, where we're taking it a bit more serious. We're on about trying to get you to the next level. But everything else at Albion, because one, they're a charity too, so they're not looking to have elite sports there. It's all about that development part of it.
Brilliant. Okay, from Mersey Maverick's point of view, again, what is the kind of key things within your club, and where have you come over the past couple of years?
Well, we're pretty much newbies. So I mean, when you look at the personnel we've got within our club as well, we're all very experienced at lots of different things in basketball. But none of us had ever started a club up from scratch. In my job roles previously, I've spent a lot of time telling people how to do it, which is but when you actually do it yourself, it's totally different. We did have a very lucky period because just as we decided to set the club, I badly broke my leg. So I was actually bedbound for about 6 months. So I spent quite a lot of time doing all the nuts and bolts of all the procedures and policies and stuff. And it also gave us an opportunity to spend some time thinking strategically about what we wanted to do, because I am a massive strategy nerd. I can't help myself. It all has to be written down in pretty pictures, all that kind of stuff. And hopefully that helps the rest of the club, what's going around in my head all the time. So one of the first things we did really was focus on what the core ethos of the club was. And I think that is absolutely key. And it's, as Clive's just said, my concern is that a lot of clubs set themselves up, get a few kids through the door and automatically go, National League, that's it. And then because of that, they tend to exclude some of the young people who come along because there's not enough room for them. So we made very early doors. We probably did have time to enter the National League when we first started, but we made a decision not to do it. And we offered sessions basically at all age levels just to get participation going, and then use that year to really think about what we wanted out of it. And when the key thing as well is we also asked the kids what they wanted. So at the end of every season, and we've stuck with this, is we communicate with the kids and the families to ask them exactly what they want for next season. Do they want to play National League? Do they want to play? Do you want to? What do you want to do? So as a result of that, we've got a clear. Sorry, my son's being very nosy. Don't talk to Cleo. Sorry. So we've had very clear ways from the get-go due to consultation with the families. It's also key as well is the fact that it allows me to be clearer about what we need funding for, because alongside with the strategy nerd in me, I like managing the finances and stuff like that. We use Sage and stuff. I'm just a nerd. So basically I can then say, right, what irritates me is when clubs go to me, well, how come you're getting all this money? And I'm like, well, because we're very clear about what we need it for. So I will go and do a bid. We've had 4 different lots of 10,000 in the last 3 years. From Sport England and small and Awards for All, because we've been very specific about what we wanted to do. We wanted to develop the girls programme. We were honest about how we wanted to do it. We got the money, and we're developing a girls programme. So, you know, I think from my perspective, it's not just about saying, oh, like, get the kids through the door. You've got to have some kind of ethos behind the club. So we will always have, and we will always make room for kids who want to participate and also play National League. They may be the worst player in the world, but if they want to play National League, we will make a place for them in our club, and that's why we like All Must Play.
Yeah, so. I think it comes down to the fundamentals. If you've got the fundamentals in place, things like the funding bids and things like that come along with it. I'd be interested to hear from Russell's point of view, the club development side of things, because obviously Leicester Riders is such a big program, such a big club, but are you still looking to keep on developing certain aspects? And how do you go about doing those sorts of things? Bearing in mind, you've obviously got the professional side of the game as well as the community aspect to it as well.
Yeah, and I think it probably comes down to the foundations that were laid 13 years ago when I first started with the club, and there was only just one team, which was the BBL team originally. And for me, we set that pyramid theory up. That's probably the best way of putting it. And having that structure from the bottom, we started from the bottom, and we had the top, and then we kind of worked our way up to make the match. So for us, the grassroots and the community programs and getting participation going, it's huge for us, and it still is now. And I think that's one of the big things for us, to have all of the other teams that we want to have, and that feeder programs. It all starts at the beginning at primary school programs, with programs like whether that's after school clubs, Schools for Health, and the other one that we also do a lot of now is something called Development Day, where the kids can come along. They just have an hour and a half coaching, they stay and watch the game. And that's sort of like our entry level programs. So their first taste as a basketball is often that. And we try and reach about 10,000 young people every year to create that interest. Obviously, we're trying to do 2 different things. We're trying to get as many people playing and into basketball as possible, but we're also, being honest, we're also trying to sell tickets because of the professional teams for the men's and women's. A big part of what we do at grassroots is getting the players into the community and having them as role models and ambassadors, and motivate and inspire people to take part in the sport, but also come along and watch the sport. And we found that as a big circle as well. The more people that come and watch the sport, the more they play it, and that's the sort of the circle that we try and work towards. And then we spent a lot of time for us building that pathway program and trying to get to that, developing elite British players. A big passion of mine was trying to create a pathway for British players that meant they didn't always have to go to the States, and we've seen it for a bit. We've seen some of Clive's players come across to our Chinewood Elite Academy that have then developed up and come through, whether it be into Loughborough University or go to the States potentially, and then hopefully we'll see them back with a Riders shirt on one day, and that investment, and we've got a lot of work into that over the last 5 years, and that's been a big part of our development, is to prove to players, and we've seen that the likes of the successes of the Jamel Andersons, Connor Washingtons, Josh Ward Hibbert on the men's side are all broken through to the pro teams, but also the ones on the fringes as well that didn't make it into the Riders team are still playing professionally elsewhere. We have a lot of other players playing in the BBL, which is huge success for us. For us, it's about developing people and basketball players, but people comes first. And every one of them is a student athlete. So every part of our pathway, even during our National League programs, we really emphasise how important the education part is. So then when they move up to the academy programs, they know they're student athletes as well. I suppose that's what we spent a lot of our time over the last sort of 3 or 4 years really developing to pushing that forward. But it all does come with the bottom foundation part, which is one of the most important. And I suppose just to give everyone an idea of the structure that we're actually in, we have our foundation, which is our charity, which is the Riders Foundation. We have a limited company, which is the professional club. And then we have a subsidiary of the foundation, which is our Morningside Arena, Leicester Arena. So sort of 3 sides to our business. And we've now developed up to about 40 full-time staff and about 80 part-time staff, as well as we've got about 3,000 people playing on a weekly basis.
Yeah, I think that's great to hear, and I think it's a case that actually there's a lot of community work going on, despite being very big and having the professional side of things. Actually, the core aspect of what happens at Riders and the BBL clubs is at the community level, and it's getting those kids in at the door, so actually they become a rider for life sort of thing. But I'll trademark that quote now, just in case you haven't used it before. Simon, I'm really interested to hear from you as well, because Kate was saying about how she always used to advise on how to start clubs and those sorts of things. And obviously, you've been going for about 5-6 years or so at Uttoxeter. So it'd be really useful to know kind of some of the difficulties you've found starting up a club, and kind of some of the support that you would have liked that you now know you should have been asking for, sort of thing. It'd be really interesting to hear about that.
Okay. Difficulties off the top of my head would probably be really knowing exactly what qualifications you need to start coaching with schools, because we were able to go into some schools and they wouldn't ask for level 1 or level 2 or anything like that. But I know that as we started to move into the bigger venues like leisure centres, and we found ourselves that, oh gosh, we need level 1 and 2 now, and it's sort of a rush to get everyone passed off with coaching. I think this sort of is another point on that, is that the courses for basketball coaching are quite hard to find near us. I think the closest one we found was probably in the Birmingham area, which is about an hour and a half away from us. But one thing that I would really like to see as an improvement is just more coaching courses around the country. And I know there's an option to host your own coaching course. And I know that we've been looking into that. So that was one big difficulty. What was the second part of the question, sorry?
Kind of understanding the kind of questions you feel like you should have asked at the start and have subsequently just managed to find out by doing stuff.
Okay. I think what makes the club is the volunteers, the people. And we found out pretty quickly that people are unreliable, and that people can let you down. And I think you have to be prepared for that, and you have to really figure out what your volunteers want to see out of this as well, and see that their vision is aligned with yours, because otherwise you get people, a group of people who are competing against your vision. So I'd say, yeah, make sure that the volunteers are on your side.
Yeah, and that's to do with motivations of volunteers, and for me, it's assessing what a volunteer wants to get out of something. You need to play to their strengths. So are they good at a certain thing, and actually kind of allocate them to do the stuff that they're good at, so they feel worthy and they're actually inputting as well. Nick, from your experience with leagues and those sorts of things, have you seen clubs dramatically rise with the number of entries and quality based on the fact that they're very well organised and they have things in place, or has it been a case of teams will drop out and all of a sudden someone will be brand new, come into the league and then drop off again and that sort of thing? Have you seen quite a consistency, particularly in the Sussex region?
I think it's a bit of all of those. I've seen very long-standing clubs that have really relied on one or two key individuals to be the life and soul of the party, so to speak, and keep that club running. And then the problem becomes when they look to kind of retire, they haven't worked to make sure there are people to replace them. So what was just said about volunteers is very important. I have sadly seen clubs lose a lot of very, very good, very willing, very passionate volunteers because there was no club guidance, or the volunteers didn't feel that their voice was heard within the club. And this isn't new people to the sport. This is very experienced people within the sport who just feel that they can't contribute any further in a club because, you know, their contribution isn't being kind of acknowledged and welcomed and their viewpoint listened to. With regards to the size of clubs, yes, we've got many clubs in the southeast which will kind of run from young junior teams all the way to senior National League teams. And even then, I would say that they run in a disparate way because you'll have those that are concentrating on the lower age groups or maybe the seniors, and there's no real apparent pathway within that club of how people can not just progress as a player, but also get the experience of maybe doing some coaching. So yes, we always need more coaches, but equally on the officiating side, doing some tabling, doing a bit of refereeing, really to give those kids the breadth of experience in the game of basketball. So if for whatever reason maybe their playing ability doesn't take them where they would like to go, if they love the game, then within that club, they can be helped to kind of further the basketball career, either as an official or as a coach. So I do think that things like that are very important. So volunteers. Clubs need to kind of work and help their volunteers. And as a final point, I would just say those clubs that are maybe run by a very dominant one or two people, they're the clubs that maybe struggle. And to kind of answer your first question, they're the clubs that can kind of appear very quickly, that can then disappear very quickly, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think the structures in place and the core, the foundations for things like succession planning, you know, what happens if this coach left and those sorts of things, to actually have those things in place. And moving over to Luke and your active partnership role and your club development area, that sort of thing, what would you say are the kind of key things that a club needs to have in place to be successful, or certainly at least sustain what they're currently doing?
I think, I mean, I'm generalising here across all sports and, you know, giving my views, but there isn't necessarily a starter pack in terms of when you start a club up. Most of the time it's, have you got money and have you got a coach? There's no real actual understanding around, you need a strategy, you know, even what Simon said, you need a philosophy of what it is you want to achieve. The point that I think Kate made around, you know, if we go back to basketball, people run a club for a year and they think, yeah, I can be in a national league now and I can do, you know, those sort of things can be very detrimental. But I think in terms of club development and development of organisations just in general, you get two types of people at clubs. You get people that are amazing coaches. They're that good at coaching and that good being around people. It saps all their time. And even if they are quite good at the development side of it, they haven't got the time to do that because they're having to coach, they're having to monitor, do the organising, etc. Or you get some clubs that have a really good committee and they have people that are very, very clued up, that are very good at the infrastructure and getting money and etc. Unless you're a bigger club like Leicester, of course. And every now and again, you know, okay, you get someone that has got both sides of it, that understands the structure of it and understands coaching and development. I think a lot of clubs struggle or may go bust or may stop because of two things. One, money, or two, the workforce. If we go back to Nick's point, I mean, Simon, I set up Burton Tornadoes National League team with a guy called Keith Moran. Yeah, Keith's one of my best friends. And I moved up here from Sussex in 2000, and in my last school year, we set up Burton Tornadoes. It took a long time to get that team going. You know, his son, Kelvin Morant-Hudson, was a particularly good player. We ended up in National League. But when I moved back to London, Keith didn't have the coaches and people that he could trust. And the club just stopped because he didn't want to go against his philosophy of getting anyone in just for the sake of it. And again, it is really hard. I mean, again, I'm generalising, to get volunteers now, because I feel like volunteers now want to work for a couple of months and then they want to get paid. And I think, I mean, I'm still volunteering now and not getting paid for some stuff, and I think that becomes, that's a cultural thing now across sports in general. But that infrastructure role, whether it's a community interest company, whether it's a CIC, whether it's a basketball club, you need that person who understands like the development of the club, understands how many people you've got coming in each year, understands what direction you're going in, understands finance, understands, look, in 2 years' time we're going to need new baskets, and actually the facility that we're in aren't going to pay for them, so I need to think about planning about that now. Even something as simple like you said, Kate, being able to know exactly who comes into your club, where they sort of live, their backgrounds. So when you are applying for funding and things like that, it makes it a lot easier. But equally, anyone can point someone towards funding, but people at clubs might not know what to do with it, and whether they can apply for it, whether they can't. And I think that you've got to remember, people are volunteers. So some people that run clubs, or they get paid very little to do what they're doing, they don't understand what a strategy is, or a big goal vision, or those sort of things. And I think that there needs a lot more support. I know you've got Club Matters, I get that, but sometimes just going on a course or watching something online doesn't work. Like, I got more out of listening to Russell's podcast the other day, you know, and information out of that than I would do a course. So I think that it's nothing happens without workforce, and workforce can be volunteers, it can be, you know, people that are paid, but you know, the workforce is the most important thing. You can work on everything else around it, in my opinion, but unless you've got that workforce, you are going to struggle.
I 100% agree with what you're saying there, because I think when I first started the club and it was myself and a bag of balls, obviously we had BBL team and we had different things, but there wasn't a community program and there wasn't an infrastructure, and actually that was all built off, first of all, was volunteers coming in to build that initially, getting the players to do some of the activity and then bringing in other expertise and other coaches. And I think that's one of the biggest things that is hard in British basketball, is that point of it's really hard for people to get that experience, because it does, like with football and other sports, they can go around the corner and there's a team there, they can do that from a young age and they can be part of that. And I think that's one of the things that we focused a lot on over the last few years as well, is not just the player side, but developing of coaches, developing of officials, and also offering lots of sort of internships for club development and administration. So we have programs where we offer 3 months where they can come in, and every year, for me, it's quite a big thing, and support myself and assist me for 3 months to see actually what it takes to run a club and that aspect of stuff. Because I think that's how I learned. I didn't go to university or college to learn how to run a basketball club. I did it after 14 years of volunteering and spending every evening and weekend with Vince. Like that was the best way to do it. And I think basketball is very different to any other sport. We've seen it as well. Lots of people from other sports come into our sport and think, oh, well, I did this in football, I did this, I did that, I did this in rugby. But it doesn't work the same. Basketball is very different, and you have to understand your client, your customers, the players, their parents, the volunteers, and somehow get that one centralized vision for everyone to be behind. Sometimes that is success and winning, sometimes that is development, sometimes that is just being part of something. I think that's one of the biggest things in life. Everybody wants to be part of something, and if you can make them feel part of it, and that will really help the club to move forward.
That moves very smoothly into my next question. Thank you very much, Russell. Is about stakeholders and their points of view and members and how they engage. So, Kate, it'd be interesting to hear from you about how you engage with members to make your club what it is today.
Well, we started off because of various experiences of people close friends and our own personal experiences. We kept it very, very tight in the early days, where there was a very small group of us who were friends almost, and sort of like, right, this is the way we think this can work, so we cracked on. We've always consulted with the families and things about what their interests are in terms of where they want to play, what they want to do. things like that, you know, what direction we could do. But just in terms of, we're in a position at the moment, in fact, just before lockdown, we were up, there was John, myself and Marie, John and Lavery's wife, who were booked on one of the courses about what kind of direction the club goes in. So whether it was, you know, the kick, or whether we become a charity or whatever. Because one of our failings, and I would say this is a failing, and I'd say this to anybody within the club, is we're really anxious about losing the vision by taking in volunteers that don't necessarily appreciate the vision and don't necessarily have the same motivation. We're all volunteers, all of us. So, you know, and it's difficult. So when you're engaging with stakeholders and things like that, whether they be new people, I don't know, we're not at the stage yet where we're looking at, you know, going towards academy, you know, trying to link up with an academy or anything like that. We're still, you know, still early days. We're growing up. So my view is something that we're trying to explore as a club is like, what is next steps outside of the club in terms of who do we start to work with, to develop partnerships with. We've got a very poor local authority. We've done this without any support from Liverpool City Council at all. They weren't even have us on the mailing list leading up to lockdown, despite me asking. Our active partnership, as I put now, is very good, and they've been really supportive. But so externally, working with people, we've got a long way to go, to be honest. But internally, I think it's almost, it sounds naff. You know, when you hear people say, it's like, you know, our club is a family kind of thing. It does kind of, we're trying to develop that as an ethos. So where you do like feel, and hopefully, you'll know this yourself, even you, Russell, with such a big setup you've got, there is that sense of belonging. There is that sense of wanting to be part of something, whether you've got 12 people in that club or whether you've got 200 like us. I make a point of knowing everybody's name in that club. I stand on the door and I say goodbye to them all as they leave. And I know about their parents, and it's hard work, and we all work really hard at doing it, because then they will talk to us. Lockdown's been tough. I mean, all of you will know this. And, you know, I was listening to you as I arrived about the fact that, you know, you're seeing people on the outdoor courts. We haven't got any in Liverpool, says Liverpool City Council again. But we're really concerned, seriously concerned about our young people who are out there at the moment with their basketball, which was their life, their savings. We're trying to sort of keep going communications. We've got quizzes going. You know, we're not doing them. The families are. So, you know, spot the player, all this kind of stuff is hilarious. It does my head in with WhatsApp, because like, the phone's constantly going like that. But, you know, it is about creating an environment within the club where the participants, whether they be, you know, the players, the families, your volunteers, your coaches, can turn around and say, well, actually, not comfortable with this. You know, what can we do to change it? Or equally, I think we've got this idea. We're pretty good with volunteers, but John is very fussy about who he will allow to coach his kids, our kids. So, and I agree with that to some extent. So, you know, we do have a pretty good mentoring program going on, but you've got to be good to coach one of our National League teams, I tell you. He'd coach them all if he could. But it is literally about, you know, sort of sharing the loads, because that's one of the big things. They agree that we totally, you've all said this, is by the time we get to February and March, we are on our knees. Because we've just given everything to basketball, and we do need to look at how we can expand workforce and stuff like that, and also trust people, because, like, you know, as you were saying before, you know, it's about, you've got to be able to trust that volunteer to do what you want them to do. And again, that's up to us as club leaders, for want of a better phrase, to be able to support and train them properly. So I mean, I love it. I wouldn't do it. You know, it's the best thing I've ever done in basketball, and I've done some great things in basketball, but I love it. I love it. Wouldn't do anything different.
That moves on to another point as well. This is an open question for anyone to chip into, is the effect that a basketball club can have on an individual. And actually, you're not just a basketball club, you're bigger than that. You're a sounding board, to a degree, sometimes even a counselling service, depending on kind of the conversations, the relationships you have with family. So it's kind of open for anyone to kind of chip in.
Sam, can I just come in there? Because I think that this is really important. One of the big things I've been trying to, one massive club in our region I've been trying to do this with for a long time, because they have a lot of members. But one thing that we're not very good at across the sports sector in general is impacting the work that we do. And if I just talk about the one particular club that I was working with, the economic cost of crime statistics 2017, I don't know what the latest one is because it's not my favourite reading of all things, but a homicide cost the taxpayer £2.3 million, right? And the amount of young kids that they stop going down that route, you know, is unbelievable. And they're paying £50,000 a year for a facility. Now, I suppose the point that I'm trying to make is that that club does amazing work, like lots of basketball clubs do in the whole country. But sometimes when you're engaging your stakeholders and you're trying to show your impact to the community and what you do, there's a who do I want to talk to stakeholders, because we need to get resource and we need to help move our club forward. And then there's the stakeholders that are parents, local communities, schools, that you want to just show that this is our club and this is what we do. And I think, again, you're volunteers. A lot of people are volunteers. It's hard to do this. But I think when clubs start speaking a certain language, you all of a sudden get more sponsorship, you get more volunteers, you get more. I mean, we've got a guy in our region, Matt Coles. He is unbelievable at getting sponsorship in. He is amazing. And he obviously speaks the right language and says the right things. And I haven't cracked it yet. I don't claim to be great at it, but sport in general, even Basketball England to Sport England, proving the impact that their clubs have on the wider community. And I think that when you speak the right language or you say the right things in impact, you might get someone like a public health saying, actually, your club does amazing stuff in your area. We'd like to commission you some money to help improve, I don't know, young females' mental health. But I think it's understanding who your stakeholders are and showing what impact you make.
I think that's a big thing for all clubs. I think the fact is we're so busy with limited resource and so busy doing it, we don't actually shout enough about it. Like even us as a club who does have an infrastructure, we don't spend enough time actually saying, well, this is what we do, this is how we do it, and aspects of that, and then putting that together. And so we have programs with the police and the youth service. We have a program called Shoot to the Future on Friday nights, getting kids off of the streets and a bit of fun basketball, sort of 8 till 10 on a Friday night. Music playing. It's just really fun, and just scrimmaging and getting. Okay, we'll do a bit of skills. Bring in somebody to talk about different subjects and aspects of stuff. And I think that sort of impact work, we kind of even forget about it because we're so busy doing it and making it happen and that aspect of stuff that actually we don't do very well at sharing that with each other as clubs to show actually, well, here's a good program that's actually interacted and made a big impact, but also then trying to get bigger picture funding for it and that side. And I think we as a sport, when I say we, I mean the whole country, I mean British basketball, as clubs all need to do that way better together, because I think if we did, it would make all of our lives so much easier. And then the other point I just wanted to come back to you on was the big thing for clubs is the facilities. Facilities are the biggest issues for all clubs, especially new clubs. Every new club I speak to, and they're talking to me about £25 to £70 an hour just to be able to get, and then they're trying to charge the kids at £8, £10 a head just for an hour session by the time they pay the coach and stuff. Like the biggest thing we need to do is have, I suppose, and I think that's where, if you can get the right partners in your area, whether that's schools, colleges, and actually you can understand what you can do for them, and then potentially what they can do for you, and what access you can then get, it makes you way easier to develop your club and move that stuff forward. Whereas I've seen so many clubs fold because they've just tried to do it themselves and set up and rent a facility and do it all themselves and things. I don't think basketball can survive that way. I think it really has to be real partner funding. You have to go and work with different people to be able to meet your agenda, what you want to do as a club, so that actually can work as a business and that thing. And I think one of the big things we need to do as a sport is have a proper facility review of how we can actually build. Like one thing every other sport's so lucky with, cricket, football, rugby, they all have, like, you walk around the corner from the house, like their own facilities everywhere. Well, at the moment, I think we have 3 or 4 basketball facilities in the whole country. That somehow we've got to strategically work with colleges, schools to create these facilities that actually we can base these clubs in. So actually school uses it during the day, and actually clubs get used to it between 6 o'clock and 10 o'clock every night. Like them sorts of partnerships are really important for clubs.
Yeah, I think
that's where
those two things follow on from one another as well. So being able to kind of document the impact that the sport has then starts to turn heads. And I think as an NGB, we should be doing more around that kind of thing. So actually promoting kind of the stuff that does happen at grassroots level, not just necessarily sometimes the the big headlines and the big hitters and that sort of thing. Actually, what's happening in various corners of England, so that actually we can promote it across the board as opposed to kind of just the regular stuff that's churned out. Kate, you were going to say something?
Yeah, because we are, and I will say this, there was no strategy about it. We got our facility, we used a school that was building a new sports hall, and it was who I knew meant that we ended up getting that sports hall. And I went in and I, talked a good game, and we ended up in that sports hall. And when we were in there, they're very happy with what we do because we look after it better than the PE staff do, and so on and so on. But we are maxed out to where we are now. We can't go any further because we can't get another minute in that sports hall. And so I agree, and I understand there is some work going on with BE around mapping facilities and things like that, and evidence based. But just going back to the other point as well, with being able to sort of evidence things, it is really difficult. I've done it professionally most of my life. I still find it hard. The information is out there, but you've got to know where to look for it. You've got to know how to use it. I write bids, and they're pretty easy because I've been doing them for a long time. But one of the things I think it comes back to, which was my original point, is that I've tried to help some clubs, and I've gone along and I've sat down with them, and I've said to them, right, okay, what do you want this? I can get you £10,000. What do you need it for? And they just go, and they haven't really had it. They just know that they need that money, but they've not really thought about what sort of the objective is. What do they want to do? Are they happy with where they're going at the moment? That's fine. Well, why do you need the extra money? Do you want to develop a girls program? Do you need coach education, and so on and so on? A lot of it is just like chasing the money and wasting time chasing the money, chasing sponsorship, when you haven't actually got a clear idea of what it's for. We again, because we've got a wide range of experience, we know the different pots and stuff, and we still struggle financially because we spend the money on developing the club. But it is all about how to write, knowing where the information is, how to write, but clearly knowing what you want the money for and what it will do for your club.
And for a lot of funding bids as well, they tend to be not ongoing costs. They tend to be for projects and development, as opposed to here's some money, reduce your membership and we'll cover that bit. And actually, a lot of funders want to see the development of the sport and the impact that it has there.
Yeah.
Luke, have you got Think Active and things like that? What's the importance of active partnership when it comes to things like funding and kind of the support that your active partnership does, but also active partnerships across the whole of the country as well?
I think that, for me personally, funding is one of the most important things, and I think a lot of clubs need to help developing that. But again, I think it's what Kate said, what do they need it for? But then some people have never seen any examples of anything good, so that it goes around in a circle. Funding's huge, but unfortunately we don't have the time to write bids and do stuff that we just don't have the time to do that. We will influence and try and send people to the right places. But one thing I don't know a lot of clubs know about is in every area of the country, there is an infrastructure contract to an infrastructure organisation that are there to help support the voluntary sector. And where Clive's based, SCVO in Samwell, they have an absolutely amazing funding digest that everyone in the country can access and look at, and what funding's out there. It is unbelievable. It's one of the best ones I've ever seen. And I think that those organisations can help support clubs around funding and stuff like that. But we don't, night girls, night. Love you both. No. Sorry. They got to go to bed now. No. But basically, we don't actually we haven't got the time to write bids and do things for people. There are bid writers out there that do those sort of things, and then that gets people into tricky situations because you've got to try and find a way to hide a 12% bid that's gone to someone who's wrote a grant, and it becomes very tricky, and then you feel a bit like you're a criminal yourself because you're trying to treat the system and all you're doing is trying to help your community. But funding is obviously it's that big thing that people could do more. Like Clive, there's probably that many people that you've helped probably save their life through basketball. You don't want massive accolades for it, but actually if someone can just give you a little bit more money to have a bit more resource to help you do more at what you do, it'll make a massive difference. And I think that, again, it just goes back to if you're good at getting funding in, then there's a lot of people that can do that, but it doesn't necessarily mean their delivery is of quality. So I'd probably say that we signpost to a lot of funding. websites, and there are people. I mean, we've got things like the Heart of England in our area that only cover certain patches, and we try and influence the Police and Crime Commissioner. But again, if you know where it is, and like I said, if this does go out to the public and the basketball community, I would look on SCVO Samwell's website and look at the funding digest that they bring out every 2 weeks. Is the best thing I've ever seen. And if you've got a project, like Kate said,
say that URL again.
it's the website is if you just type in SCVO Samwell, it'll come up the funding digest. I can send Sam stuff, but one thing I would say is if people want to apply for funding and they're just honest about what it is they want to do, then you will have a good chance of getting that money. I think where some people go wrong is they apply for loads of pots, they don't know what they're doing, they struggle to report it back, and then they end up disappearing, so it becomes very difficult.
Yeah.
Luke, can I ask you a question? Just from with me regional chair hat on, and also my knowledge of Merseyside as well, I'm concerned that there's a lot of clubs who don't engage with the county sports partnership, active partnerships as they are now. Not in terms of the fact that, they have to go to meetings and all that hoots duty, but it's more for the fact that they're even on a mailing list, an email list that brings that kind of information to them. Because I know several clubs locally who don't engage with Merseyside at all, and they're mad because we get quite a lot of resource from them, and things like free courses. I did a 2-day mental health course, and there's all that kind of stuff, but they're not engaged with those, and it's literally just sending an email in and picking what you need.
Yeah, my advice would be that every obviously active partnership is different, but the Sport England strategy is around working with low socioeconomic groups, black and ethnic minority backgrounds, people with disability, women and girls. And I think if you touch on any, like mental health, you touch on any of those things when you make a phone call to an active partnership and say, look, we're a basketball club, we do this and this, we'd like to talk to you about development, can you help us? They might not be able to give you time and money, some might, but they will be able to link you or hopefully send you into the right people. And I think that, again, a lot of it's who you know and who you link with. But I do think active partnerships should be supporting basketball clubs, and especially, basketball is 60% in terms of its ethnicity, and a lot of that that's all from basketball clubs. And I think that's a big target area for the strategy of Sport England, underrepresented groups. So a lot of basketball clubs should be working with their active partnerships, and active partnerships should want to work with their clubs. So I would just suggest that you just contact them and just try and speak to whoever leads on the community side of things. That's what I would suggest to do. And if it's a West Midlands thing, or even East Midlands, I'm happy to try and support people. I mean, I can try and support you all over the country if people really want to know, but I mean, sure that Sam can try and do that as well.
Yeah, I've been talking to a lot of active partnerships and trying to link people up, and because I've just shared the Sandwell stuff in the chat as well for people to use, and that's kind of some information that I send out to clubs when they request it as well. Russell, you're going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, and I think especially for me, when I first set up, the county sports partnership was huge. The advice that they gave me, the support they gave me at the beginning. Obviously, as we've got bigger and bigger, we still have a great relationship with them, but it's obviously changed a little bit. We work with them more now with the professional clubs, with Tigers, Leicester City, and the cricket as well. But the support that they provided us with, direction, access to helping us with some of our grant funding bids and that aspect of stuff was huge. And also they were massive in regards to our facility agenda of trying to provide a home for us, the club. And I think that, just to reiterate how important it is for all clubs out there to get involved in, I know there were county sports partnerships, but now active partnerships. Go and meet them, engage with them, and the more you engage and the more you meet with them, the more that they'll understand what you're about and what you're doing, and the more support they can provide as well. And that's the same with any partner. If you want anything to come out of any partnership or any working relationship, you have to invest into it yourself first before you're going to get anything out of it. And I think that's a big thing.
Yeah, carrying on the talk about funding and stuff, Clive, for me it's interesting because obviously the foundation comes under the West Bromwich Albion badge and the football side of things and the Premier League and that sort of thing. How does the funding work with you within the foundation, and is it treated as a normal your traditional club as such, or is it slightly different?
Well, most of the funding comes from we've got three development programs: the basketball, disability, and girls football. All the money basically comes from the other two: the girls football and the disability. The basketball, my basketball program, brings nothing to the club at all. It's always we always like we're taking and not giving anything. We don't get anything from even basketball. We have to pay all our subs, all the rest of it. So we pool all our money. So I forget the girls football get from the football league. I think it's like 40, 50, 60 grand put into this pot. Then we get X amount from disability to put in a pot, and then we put our 2 pence in, and then we're using all that funding. Now, as I said, it's where I'm lucky is that Albion are not looking for me to create, stars. They're all about getting kids off the streets, getting people engaged, and all the rest of it. So I do that. So although I'm working at a loss, they see that as profit for them. So I will get extra funding from from satellite. I do a lot of satellite clubs, working at the school itself. So I work at Sandwell Academy School. So we get to use the sports hall, as Russell was saying. We get to use the sports hall from 6 o'clock till 10, and I get that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We don't have it Friday, but we got it Saturday and Sunday. So a lot of our money, would have been spent. I mean, I did work it out. It was I think it was over 45 grand that we actually saved by not having the sports, by using their sports hall. But obviously I've got to give it back in kind. I've got to work in the schools and so on and so forth. I do exactly the same at the university. So I'm now at the Wolverhampton University. So I now can do little bits and pieces for them, and then they say, okay, you can now use the sports hall, because that is the big, that's the big thing. That's where all the money goes to. It is your venue. So I mean, lucky in that we've got that. So myself and Nathan Gittins, there's only 2 of us that have actually paid members that actually work. All the rest are volunteers. We do give them some kind of, we will give them expenses as such, but they're all volunteers. And as everybody said, you've got to get those good volunteers behind you. Not the one, obviously you want, they've got to be enthusiastic, but they have to know, as we've all just said, what the club's all about. What do we want from the club? So it's great having loads, because I've gone down that road. I've had loads of volunteers, but all they do is badmouth the club, especially because they're Wolves fans and they don't, and that's all I got to deal with. They're like, oh, well, how can we get our kids to do this stuff down at Wolves or down at Villa or what have you? And that's why they're in the club, because they're trying to, go on from the inside and kill it from the out. But as I said, we're lucky in the fact that the main thing is the facilities that we get, we don't have to pay for. We siphon off everybody else's funding. As I said, the disability gets so much money. They get money left, right, and centre, which is great. And again, the girls' football. We do some kind of sponsoring stuff to get some money in, but a lot of that money from Albion for the basketball comes from me doing, as I say, doing stuff in the schools, satellite clubs. We also, because I'm working at Dudley, and Dudley is now part of the Albion, so me working for Dudley College. They pay me to be at being their head coach, so that money goes along with the with Albion funding. Plus, obviously, the players paying subs as well. So that's a big part of it. So and that's basically where all our funding comes from.
Thanks for that, Clive. Oh, and moving on, Simon, got a quick question in regards to this being a fairly fresh club, 5-6 years old or whatever. Kind of what advice would you give to even newer clubs to kind of aid to get them to the point where you are? Because obviously you've developed so much over the past kind of few years. Actually, there will be some funding requirements behind that. But is that done through things like memberships in the traditional way, or are you going out and applying for different grants and those sorts of things?
It's done through relationships. like 80% of this call has been talking about relationships with people, and
Yeah.
it's having relationships with leisure centres. Everyone active owns the leisure centre, so we have close relationships with them, people in the council, you know, people in schools as well. Like I go into schools because I know the head teacher, because, you know, he used to be my head teacher at that school. So it's all about relationships, really. And, you know, like Russell was saying, finding out what their agenda is and trying to align it as well. Because most of the time you'll find that most people's agendas are sort of, they can come into line with each other. It's just finding those sweet spots. So I think relationships really for us. And then I think the second thing, we've talked about it in this call, is volunteers. I think it's so important to have a core unit of volunteers. And then thirdly, I think it's just comes down to drive and passion for the game, really.
Yeah, that's echoed throughout. Since I've been working as well, there's so much passion within basketball, and I would say from the majority of the time, it's not necessarily a tribal thing. Everyone's very much in the same boat, and they understand people, and actually everyone kind of comes under sometimes some of the same issues. Sometimes it doesn't happen always that way, but for the majority of the time it does. Nick, and following on from the funding side of things, in regards to how it works with your league, and your experiences of clubs, and have things like fees and stuff increased, and has that had a positive impact or a negative impact on some of the clubs in your Sussex region?
Fees as in Basketball England membership fees, or the way the clubs need to better work out how much they charge members to cover court costs?
Yes.
Budgeting for equipment they're going to need in a year or two's time. You know, we always get basketballs that go missing for some strange reason. I would just say in a general sense, yeah, clubs need to be better at budgeting. Seeing too many clubs where teams run in a way independently of each other in that same club, and they will look at their budget and say, well, this is the cost we need to cover, right? That's £20 per month per person. Another team in that same club is looking at it in the same way, but somehow coming up with £35 per person. And I think clubs need to work better internally to kind of better understand their costs. But again, as we keep mentioning on the volunteers side, to encourage the volunteers to be helping with the budgets, because if you don't manage the budget effectively, what's that saying? If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And I have seen clubs get into great financial difficulty because they did not plan effectively, or they didn't have a handle on the finances. It's really difficult. One of the things I was going to mention is in the development document you sent round, there was nothing on there around Club Mark or the Club Matters process. And if a club goes through that kind of process, then financial planning and budgeting will be something they will actively be working on. But again, I have seen clubs where the finances are kind of the best kept secret you could imagine. Sometimes for good reasons, but perhaps unfortunately sometimes for bad reasons. And then when there's a major problem, it's too late. And you then see clubs having to scramble around and quite literally go to members near the end of the season and say, I'm really sorry, but we need an extra amount of money from you. I'm not saying it's fraud or financial mismanagement, but it does leave a very bad taste in many people's mouths. And I've seen it several times, certainly in kind of local league clubs in our area, where that poor management leads on to bigger problems and sometimes ultimately the demise of that club. So yeah, not an easy one.
Yeah.
I did have an extra question around on the funding side. And Kate, I might drop you an email because we're doing, as you may have seen, some good work in the southeast, trying to do some development around the women's and the all girls processes and maybe CVL competitions. So we need to be kind of putting some funding plans together. I think, Luke, you mentioned something about 12%. Somebody was claiming 12% of funds they raised. So I just wanted to ask the group, do we feel it's a good or a bad thing if somebody is working hard, spending a lot of time and effort to get income in to kind of fund all of this, if they're taking a very small percentage by way of, I can't say it's a salary because we're all volunteers, we're not paid, but at least to kind of offset some of their time and expenses?
12% I think is high.
Yeah.
I personally, I find it hard. Well, I think, you know, if you haven't got time and extra, so I have written bids for people and taking a percentage. But normally it depends on who they are and what it's for. So, and how long it takes me to do things. So I might take 5% on a 10 grand because it does. This particular one hasn't took me very long, or I might not charge anything at all. But you know, if you're in a position in a club, you know, that you haven't got time to write it and somebody's offering to do it, well, the way I would look at it is that if you've got, you know, £1,000 in your bank account, which means that you can get 10 grand worth of funding that you wouldn't have had, you know, you get 9 grand, don't you, really, rather than the 10, but it's still better than nothing if you know, you pay 10%. There are a lot, it depends on who the bid writer is, really.
I think the guy I'm referring to, I mean, he's unbelievable. He does stuff for Aston Villa. He does stuff for Heart of England. I mean, he's very renowned. He's I mean, he brings in millions every year. But I mean, actually, Hayward TV Eagles actually used him. Nick, my old club, Nick McAdam used him, and they got some money in to do some stuff down there. But the problem with bid writers is, and this is where people get in a bit of a pickle, and I think that when a bid writer writes a coordination fee into a bid, it's how you then extract that money. And then if a funder, say someone like Sport England, want to see all that finance back, you can't send a form back from someone, grantgetter or whatever.com, because they'll be like, well, what's this money being spent on? So it is difficult. I agree with Kate, if you've got money in the bank to be able to do it, or you work on a retainer sort of thing. But what I'd like to see more of is maybe Basketball England offer a bit of that function, that even if it means that clubs have to give a bit of their bid back, it's fine. But if Basketball England are helping with those bids and it's going towards helping the strategy in the longer term, it'd take a lot of stress away from people, because people don't have the time. And my basketball club, Redditch, I mean, Dave Bradshaw, some people might know him on this call, he's an absolute legend, and he's been running that club for 25 years. And I know he has put a lot of his own money into that, into running that club. You could say that's bad planning, but the amount of people he's produced, because he's all about local league, he's not bothered about national league. And when players are good enough, he says, go and play. Well, it used to be Birmingham Bullets, but now there's loads of other clubs around the region, go and play for them. But it's been very hard getting money into Redditch to try and help that club out, and having a couple of bids we got in a few years ago really helped the club out a lot. But I think that collectively, whether it's something Basketball England speak to a potential bid writer or not, or an organisation, that then all clubs can use that same organisation, I think that would be probably a better way forward, because it means that everyone's on the same page. But yeah, 12% is quite high, Nick, if I'm honest with you. And I'm not saying that Kate's going to tout herself out and say, I'm going to do loads of... No,
I'm not. Kids, believe me, I've got time.
But if you have got someone who's a basketball person, or someone, who can do that, then, you know, and if you look at it on a bigger scale, you know, if you're a football club and you want a new stadium or something, sometimes you will bring in a consultant to help do that. That is similar to like a bid writer, someone that knows what they're doing. And I think that you're a small club and you want some money in, it's difficult to do those bids if you're busy.
Yeah, and over the COVID period as well, we've been trying to support clubs through the Sport England funding and try to advise based on our knowledge of what Sport England are looking for. And it has been topsy-turvy with some clubs, and some clubs getting stuff and some clubs not. And
I struggled to get it. I had to completely rewrite based on, because it was really topsy-turvy, the criteria of what they. But it didn't take into account the fact that we lost all our income over the summer, which essentially paid for a lot of our in-season expenses. So when I wrote mine, I was like, I had to completely rewrite it. I mean, we got ours, but it wasn't easy. I mean, I had to I had a telephone interview with a guy who happened to be a basketball player. So that was quite useful.
You've got to show wider outcomes on your work now with all funders. The funding pots have shrunk. There isn't sport over here, art over here, community over here. Everyone's turned around and there's one pot of money really for everyone trying to do the same thing. So when people do stuff, they've got to go for wider outcomes. And I mean, I absolutely struggle at this, you know, and I do it as a day job. And I think, and that's where clubs need support and their wider outcomes. So then when they go for funding, they can say, we're doing X, Y, and Z, but actually this is going to increase the confidence of someone, which means they're going to flourish in school, which means they're going to get better grades, better jobs, etc. And that's the thing that's a difficult thing to do.
Yeah, and I think we found it difficult as a community because, again, the summer period is not our in-season. It's the opportunity to generate the funds to help subsidise things like memberships and court costs. And officials and all those sorts of things. I'm just
Yeah,
conscious.
sorry, can I ask one question?
Yeah.
It's related to the funding side of it. One of our big concerns, and you know, many of you will be in the same situation, is we're based in a very bizarre area where you know many of our kids are based in Liverpool 8, come from very difficult situations. We've also on the edge of quite a nicer area, shall we say, where you know some families do have money but have been badly affected by the pandemic. We're really unsure how to manage this whole affordability of subs based on the fact that there's going to be such an increase of young people whose families aren't going to be able to afford to pay what they have been paying. We just really struggling to get our heads around how we can manage that, because whereas yes, I can get money and you know I'm not that good, by the way, everyone. You know, whereas we can't get money and bids and things like that, it doesn't really, you know, assist fund was really good for us last year. You know, there were some families who were really desperate, but now instead of having like, you know, 10 families, we've potentially got 50 families.
Yeah.
What do? We yes, let them play for nothing, but then we can't run our programme.
Yeah, it's extremely difficult, and because we don't know when we're going back to the sport and fully playing and things like that, it makes it really difficult. And actually, again, it's a case of I've discussed with clubs on their membership system and how they work it. If you're in a fortunate position, you may delay memberships if possible, but that can be quite hard. But we're also, depending on how long the pandemic goes for, there may be further options from Sport England moving forward. We don't know.
That's the ironic thing, though, Sam, that the better you are at what you do, the harder it becomes. That is the reality of it.
Yeah, 100%.
So yeah, we're in a tricky situation.
No great ideas, anyone? No. No, all in the same boat, right?
What I'm going to do is, I'm conscious that I said it was going to be about 40 minutes long, and according to my record, it's about an hour long. So what I'm going to try and do is wrap it up a little bit, just going around the room kind of thing, and just one top tip for developing your club or seeking funding opportunities. To start with you, Russell, your one top tip that you would say to other clubs.
Start at the grassroots with partnerships. Invest into them partnerships, and try and make it work for both yourself and that partnership. I think that's one of the biggest things you can do to start with.
Cool. Simon?
Yeah, agree with Russ there, and also find a problem in the community and show your solution to these to these funding people. Brilliant.
Clive, what about yourself?
I think it's all about knowing what's in your area. What do they want within the area? So you can actually look at, you know, do the kids want, you know, a National League team in there? They probably don't. So it's knowing what they actually want. And the big thing, and it is a big thing for me, because we've got like 4 or 5 different development clubs within my area, is working with them. You know, I have a great working relationship with City of Birmingham, where we can sit down and we can say, I spoke with Rob only yesterday, and like saying, okay, can we put some of the things that we're doing together so we can actually benefit for everyone, you know? So if we both put a bid in to run a central venue league, you know, for the girls or what have you, can we do that? You know, so I think it's, you know, there is only so much money there, and the fact that I've got City of Birmingham, Team Birmingham, the other West Brom within my area, Birmingham Mets. Let's all, you know, let's work together. So I think it is just trying to work together with everyone.
Brilliant. Luke?
Yeah, I think just one thing on that point is, I think the community, I mean, it was brilliant. Like I said, Russell, again, on that podcast, said that he, you know, he's happy for people to come and learn off him and get as much as he can. And I think that's what we need to do amongst the community. If people are writing bids, if people have done projects, we want our community to stay strong, share it and stuff. I mean, I always, if anyone on here wanted any of my funding bids, I will give them to people. You know what I mean? I've got no problem in doing that. I think one of the big things I've learned in club development, and like I said, Dave Bradshaw's a bit of a mentor to me. 27 years he's run that basketball club for. I think you've got to have a philosophy of what it is you're about, and his is about just getting people in Redditch to play basketball. And don't try and do too many things at once, because that's when it completely falls apart. Concentrate on what you want to do and review it every 5 years. So many people want to buy a house and decorate it, paint it, do everything on the first day, and then it all falls apart, you know? And I think that that's the most important thing. those gradual steps, and every 5 years review what it is that you want to do. Are you happy with it? Yep, let's carry it on.
Brilliant. What about you, Nick?
I think people in the club just need to ask themselves an open and honest question, you know, amongst their staff, volunteers and members about what they want to achieve. Because if everyone feels they've had that voice and they can contribute, then that gets better buy-in. So if you are putting in requests and funding and you're planning, everyone will feel that they're part of that. I think then that way it'll be more successful as a club.
Brilliant. Kate?
Thanks so much for me going last. You've like taken all my my handy bits. I think just really to sum it up from my perspective is give people something that they want to belong to. So it's like taking bits from everybody there. Really, it's about having an ethos to your club, having a feel to your club that people want to be a part of, that people feel safe in. You know, that people want to get involved in and, you know, be partners with, you know, get to know your club, get to know your members.
Brilliant. I think from my own point of view as well, it's about setting expectations and not necessarily limitations, but it's going back to Luke's point about being realistic, and also knowing your geography. You know, the activities that might happen in London will be very different to what's happening in the northeast, you know, and it's adapting to make sure that one model doesn't fit everyone. Sometimes it's trying to find your own course and where you sit and how you function. Okay, that's brilliant. I just want to say thank you for everyone's kind of input this evening. It's been great to kind of put some more meat on the bones around club development and kind of ping off some ideas so that when I go around to creating resources, and they are basketball specific, using examples and using best practice from the community. So on behalf of myself and Basketball England, thank you very much for your time.